Good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual But Not Religious Show. I'm your host, George Lewis. I have a great guest tonight. My guest is Tracy Waters, who's written a book called From Rape to Forgiveness and the Journey Home. And what a journey it is. And you're gonna have a good time. She's a really nice woman, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with Tracy tonight. For those of you who have been here before, you'll notice that the website has been completely revamped. We're really poised to take off as far as size is concerned. Right now, if you spend a little bit of time looking at the films, there are a lot of documentary films up there that are spiritual in nature. Some of them where science and spirituality come together. And there's over 300 hours worth of viewing there. So enjoy yourself. Take a little bit of time. Come back. Visit us. I'm sure you'll find something that's of interest to you. We're adding more as we go along. We'll be creating a lot of new content. As a matter of fact, we have a spiritual comedy show coming up here in the very near future. A lot of things happening here at Spiritual Broadcasting Network. So be sure and come back. Tell your friends about us. And if you're on Facebook, be sure and give us a like, all right? Tom, we got Tracy on the line?
Yes, we do, George.
Tracy.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hello,
Well, listen, I'm really pleased that we tried this last week, didn't have much success. I'm really glad that we finally got you video and all.
Yes, thank you for having me. I agree.
So,
I agree.
Tracy, your story is a really interesting story. I enjoyed your book.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, to write a book like this, from my viewpoint, it takes courage. So there had to have been some real motivation on your part to actually put this in print, kind of a purpose or a motive, which we'll talk about later. But in the meantime, I'd like to get a little background on you. You're living in Vancouver now?
I live on Pender Island. It's one of the southern Gulf Islands.
Uh-huh.
It's right between Vancouver and Vancouver Island.
When you say southern Gulf, what Gulf are we talking about?
Do you know where the American San Juans are?
No. Okay.
The American San Juans are littered outside of Seattle and Friday Harbor.
Okay, all right.
And between Vancouver, which is Vancouver is one of our big port cities, as you know.
Gotcha.
And then Vancouver Island, where Victoria is in Sydney. It's a 35-minute ferry ride from there, and an hour and 45-minute ferry ride from Vancouver.
So you're kind of out in the boonies there a bit? Or?
Yeah, there's a bunch of islands smattered in and about here. I look out my kitchen window and I see more of the American San Juans, Portland Island, James Island, and then over in the distance, the Olympic Cascade Mountains.
Sounds gorgeous.
It's very lovely. The island I live on is 21 miles from tip to tip and 7 miles at its widest berth.
And what kind of internet connection do you got? Did they actually lay some broadband out there for you? Or?
Yes, yeah, it's pretty civilized that way.
So it sounds like it must be a fairly expensive island to live on. If they've taken the trouble to take broadband to it, real estate.
Yeah, it's one of the more expensive ones to live on. There are some that are more remote, but we're
right.
accessible by about 6 to 8 different ferries. So
wonderful, sounds grand.
We're very civilized.
You're civilized. That's a good deal. Yes. You spent some time as a youth in Toronto?
I haven't been back east at all, other than just passing through, carrying on to other places. It's one of my destinations in the near future, though.
Well, you know, we have a lot of friends in Toronto, a lot of Facebook friends, we've had several guests on the show from Toronto. Toronto is kind of almost a sister city to Sarasota here. It's a very spiritual city. A lot of people who are into, I hate to call it New Age because I don't think it is, but into that kind of thinking, you know.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and I'm very attracted to the East Coast and have been being drawn to go out there for quite a while now. So
right.
Probably I would see myself in the next year or two living there for 6 months or a year just to experience it.
Oh, good for you.
They consider us West Coast lazy out there, so I'm hoping to catch into some of that
So
high-vibed East Coast lifestyle.
So you're kind of kicked back and you want to amp the volume up a little bit.
I
huh?
want to amp it up a bit. It's time to kick it up a notch.
Well, I understand. You know, it's like kind of nice to have both, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It's nice to be able to have that kind of choice where you can have both. So, Tracy, where were you born? Were you didn't come from where you live now, right?
Actually, I was born on Vancouver Island, so not that far. I've lived in many places in the interim. I've lived in Hawaii and Seattle and Whistler and Vancouver and then a little bit of time in Alberta. But I was born on the island. I'm an island girl, so
how long were you?
Not very many of us still around here.
I bet, huh? They kind of leave and go their own way from there.
They do. They go to the East Coast.
Where things are happening, right?
Where things are going.
So how long did you live in Hawaii?
I was there for about a year.
Uh-huh.
I didn't enjoy not being able to vote and contribute and do that sort of thing. So, and things fell apart in a marriage. I was married to an American, so it was time to come back home. I seem to come back to Pender Island with my tail between my legs every time a relationship falls apart.
So you come back to heal?
I come back to heal.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's tough. I think, you know, we have these emotional wounds. They take far longer to heal than physical wounds do.
Yeah, I think it's part of what this life's journey is about for a lot of us.
Uh-huh.
I really do.
So let's kind of like give us a brief idea of what your childhood was like. How were you raised? What kind of family you come from? What kind of
I come from a very large, very dysfunctional family.
Welcome to the world, right?
Yeah, it's not that abnormal, actually. But where the child gets a little bit left behind, not much attention paid to education or like even the simplest of educations, not even help with warm winter or encouragement that way. I was really excelled in track and field and gymnastics, and none of that was fed or supported or any of that. So I ended up becoming one of these people that gives up a little easier on things because you end up not having a reason to achieve it.
I understand.
If nobody's supporting you in it, right? When you look out there in the track and field day and none of your family's there or anything, you tend to wonder why you're doing it.
Well, I also think there's a thing with children. We don't come with discipline built in. And
no,
and I think we need that parent to teach us the discipline, which helps us to, like you say, stay with things rather than leave them behind. And
getting a coach in line and things like that. Absolutely, getting me involved with after-school events that would feed my hobby would have been a good idea.
Had you thought about being a writer back when you were in high school or grade school?
Not at all. Academics were not my long suit.
What was your plan? Did you have one? You just have.
I didn't really. There wasn't even encouragement for that. I was one of those girls where they said, "Oh, don't worry about it, honey. You just meet a husband," that sort of thing, right?
Well, you got raised in that era too, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It wasn't the encouragement to be this strong intellect and the strong, intimate, independent woman.
Well, I was thinking yesterday, I think, or even today, as far as women in the workplace, and they don't get paid the same amount that men get paid here, and that's unfortunate. But at the same time, when I think about when I was dating and I was in that scene, so many women, like that's not even on their mind. What's on their mind is the husband with the money and with the car and marrying into status. So it's kind of a difficult space to be in, because I think on some level that's what young women get trained.
Well, yeah, that's true. Go to college, meet your husband in college, and that's usually they'd end up dropping up or doing nothing with the education they got. It was just to be in the right status to marry and raise a family.
Right.
And I didn't even make it that far, so.
So, how about giving us a brief idea of what happened for you? We go from rape to forgiveness and that journey home. Just give us, the basic thing that happened for you, and then we'll kind of we'll take it from there as far as the journey is concerned.
Okay. Well, I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but my quest was looking for love and looking for a family that I actually fit into, and it's but there's a movie out looking for Mr. Goodbar. So
right.
I wasn't on the trip to sainthood, but I was not by any means a very loose woman. But I was in Victoria and got gang raped by 7 men who then videotaped it, and I still have fears that it'll pop up one day on the internet. So it's not like I was on my way to be a nun, but it's certainly when you get raped, you lose the respect for your body that you should have in your way of sex, and really what I became was my body and my sex afterwards.
Right.
And I became a stripper for a little while.
Well, I don't believe that a loose woman should be raped.
No, either do I.
I don't
but
care
I'm just
what
saying
she's
I
doing.
wasn't a virgin, and my point is, it's
Yeah.
not like I was in college or anything. I was working in a club in downtown Victoria, and by no means, nor do I don't think even a prostitute should get raped.
Not at all.
No means no.
I think even a prostitute is exercising her choices, what she wants to do.
Absolutely, I have great respect for what they choose.
Yeah.
But if you're not inclined to be like that, it takes something away from your femininity and your sex. And I think I even say at one point, after that I became a stripper, I became not in tune with myself and what my role was as a female in this world, and it was a dysfunctional relationship after dysfunctional relationship.
What did it do to your self-esteem?
It wasn't good for it. I felt sexy, but that's not self-esteem. What it did for my mental self-esteem is what was damaging. I felt that all I was my sex.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing I had to offer. And so dysfunctional relationship after dysfunctional relationship is what came into play with that.
Which brings really nothing but more heartache.
Absolutely.
I really kind of get that high like a drug early on, and then you get, like the coming down from the drug.
Yeah, nothing to sustain it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, so you had some kind of a common law case that's become a model for future cases, did you not?
Yeah, it's definitely leaving a legacy. It went on for 9 years and almost killed me and probably him because he fought it so hard.
It went on for 9 years.
For 9 years. It was ridiculous. But it did change the standards for common law. And in the book I give some background of that because I think it's important for people to know who I am. But it was more control issues and ending up him being if I wasn't going to be with him, I was going to be on the streets and groveling and he almost put me there. He tried hard, but it was more of a control. He was in great control and he didn't want to give that up in the end. So as long as we were involved in the court system, he still had some amount of control over me.
So how many, do you think there are a lot of women who are really caught in that control game through men who hold the power?
Yes.
It's pretty prevalent, isn't it?
Yes, it's very prevalent. Very. I think there's an awful lot of women still. It's the cat and mouse game of male and female.
Right. Well, it's the old power struggle, isn't it?
It is.
The tough part about the power struggle is nobody really wins that, do they?
No, nobody wins at all, and certainly nobody won that court case.
Yeah, and so you had him in court for how did it finally get resolved? What happened?
Oh, just at the very end, I just couldn't do it anymore. I knew how toxic it was for me, and I knew that my healing from the car accident and from him was not going to happen until I severed all ties.
Right. Tell us
so
about
we just did a settlement at the last minute to stay out of court. And it barely paid the lawyer's bills, pardon me.
Well, it's the lawyers who always come out ahead of the game anyhow, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah. So tell us about the accident. What happened there for you?
Well, it was a rollover in a car at the Merritt Mountain Music Festival, which is all man-made roads on this huge ranch up in BC. It was going on for 10 years. And my husband and a couple of his oldest children used to go with us.
Were they in the car, children?
No, there was one fellow who was camping next to us, a friend of the family's, and then two other ladies who were camping on the other side who we didn't know. It was always sponsored by Bud, so we got to be in the VIP section because of the business we were in.
Uh-huh.
And way over on the other side of the ranch was the section that was always written up in the paper, and they had pool tables and hot tubs, and it was called the C section. And this was the 10th year we had been there. And in that 10 years, I'd never been to the C section, so the ladies were going up one night, and I decided to go with them because I wanted to see it. And a car, a great big black truck with the oversized wheels and the overheight trucks that they drive these days.
Right.
Was coming straight down the road at us. We weren't driving fast. She hadn't been drinking, but she pulled over to the side, and the road gave way, and we rolled over, and we stopped by a tree. And when it stopped, the car was still upside down. My head was down between my ankles, and the dashboard had me pinned there.
You were there for quite a while they tried to...
Not for too long, no. But the problem with my body, what caused so much damage, is I was turned around and talking to the people in the back seat when we went down. So there's a big twist in my body that they suspect is what caused I can't get it right yet, the bleed in my brain. It's like a tongue twister.
Uh-huh.
And they could not go in and shunt it, which would have been normal procedure because it was dangerously close to my brainstem.
Oh, boy.
So that's when the idea of a visualization was introduced to me.
And tell us about the visualization and how that worked. What was the, what did you go through with the visualization, how that ended up?
Well, I looked at pictures of the brain and got more familiar with the brain and the spine. And it would sit in meditation. I would take the white light, clear out my brain, and bring it down all the way to my brainstem, down my spine.
So where did that concept come from? How did that come into play in your healing?
I don't know. It almost came to me naturally.
Is that right?
Yeah, it almost came to me naturally. I did do a stint in the Victoria Pain Clinic much afterwards, and was taught some further techniques, but this one I was already doing on my own.
Well, that's very much a metaphysical or New Age or whatever you want to call it kind of concept. Were you trained or had you studied any of that before?
None.
And this just kind of came to you?
It absolutely came to me, as did using my hands to heal, using my breath with my hands. And
so you did energy work with your hands around your neck, is that?
I did. I had done it previously with my husband when he had cancer too, and it all came very natural to me.
Uh-huh. Well, I think we're in a time and space where, there are a lot of us in here bringing in a change, something lighter than where we come from.
I agree.
Yeah, and I
agree. The shift is in so many different ways than people are expecting, or even some are aware and experiencing.
Well, yeah, and I think the shift has to happen in many different ways because we're so diverse. And it's not just this shift isn't for any one sect or group of people.
No, absolutely not.
And I think coming to a place where we really accept one another's diversity and is an important thing. Not just our diversity, Tracy, but also our inadequacies. We tend to try and make each other conform to being a lot more, I think, than what we really need to be. More than anything, we just need to be real.
George, she needs a dial back.
You know what, Tracy?
I was just trying to phone you back.
Okay, take your time with that.
There we go.
We've got a connection out on an island way out there in Canada. Good, you're back. You did a good job.
Thanks.
You got that? You must have been practicing all week, right?
No.
No.
You have a good coach in Tom.
No. He's a good guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
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 He's pretty entertaining, too. He's pretty entertaining. So at some point, you decided that that ayahuasca offered a path of healing for you.
I did.
What brought you to that decision? Were you using other drugs at the time?
No, well, just the prescription drugs, which I so desperately wanted off of.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's really, I almost take offense when I hear people call it a drug because it's a medicine plant.
Yeah, it's not a drug at all.
No, it's by no means a drug. I was doing drugs, copious amounts that they were prescribing me, almost like I remember looking down, and the diagnosis was brain damage, and they had, I wasn't completing thoughts, I wasn't having original thoughts, I could barely finish a sentence, and often my speech would be slurred and inaudible, which those are definite signs of head trauma, and clearly I did have head trauma. But when you're doing 11 different medications a day, you're going to have all those symptoms as well.
Well, the drugs that they give us cause trauma in and of themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And I had given, in all fairness to Western medicine, I had given them 5 years without much headway being made.
So was ayahuasca your idea? Was it a friend's idea?
It was actually the idea of a fellow I had met at the Victoria Pain Clinic. He was an apprenticing acupuncturist there, and he was just about to take a group of people, about 30 people from Canada, down to see this so-called world-renowned healer down in Iquitos, Peru. And when he spoke of ayahuasca, he was doing a ceremony here in West Saanich. And he said, come and try it, and if you like it, come on down with the group. And I went and I did probably the equivalent of a half an ounce, and really got a great feeling from the medicine plant. I wasn't tuned in really to the group around me at all, so I don't know. I didn't capture any of their energies other than watching some of the other clients of his and seeing that they seem to be very beautiful souls.
So did you experience any of the negative effects, the vomiting and all of that from?
No, I didn't for a couple of hundred ceremonies.
Really?
Right.
Wow, that's interesting that you escaped that. Most people really suffer through that.
Yeah, well, I had had a lot of trouble with the shamans anyway. They were blocking my visions, and the one down there had seduced me, and he's just a very bad person all the way around. So
it was a pretty dark energy with this guy.
With this guy, it turned out to be a very dark energy, yes.
I have a woman friend who was clean and sober for about 14 years, and then went back to drugs and from pain. Pain actually, and the pain pills actually headed her back into that. And she struggled for the last 10 or 12 years and hasn't been able to. So I suggested to her that she go to Peru, and we lined up a place where she could go down and like with the shaman and the ayahuasca. It was quite an experience for her. I think all in all, it was difficult, but I think it was a real positive experience for her.
There are hundreds and thousands, tens of thousands of people that have a very positive experience, and I have absolutely no regrets because it's got me on the path I'm on now. And one of the things I say in the book is I talk about how I don't even dwell on it. I'm not into the legalization of ayahuasca because of the amount of Sutu shamans there are that are around administering the plant.
Right.
So I prefer not to have it too much in this country. There's also a lot of people that are using it that are trying to get at people with ill intentions. So filtering out the bad is something that's responsible for everybody to do, because when they have a hold of your soul, it can be a very precarious situation.
Well, you're in a pretty vulnerable space.
You're extremely vulnerable to these people.
Completely open. And that's part of the magic of ayahuasca is that opening of the veil where, you see things completely different, isn't it?
Absolutely. So in that you want to be in a very protected environment with people that you absolutely trust, and not people that I mean, I've had all the red flags in front of me. They were asking me about my financial position, and
Really?
yeah, they were asking all the wrong questions, and there were red flags. I was just so excited to work with the plant that I overlooked them, and even went back for more, as is in my book called Heal the chapter called Heal the Healer.
Right.
Because I truly wanted to help people find their way there. The medicine is what does the work. You in the medicine.
Absolutely.
The shaman is just a conduit, and to
kind of a guide to take you to places that you haven't been.
absolutely, and to manipulate the energies and help you heal and see what in you needs healing.
Right.
And what happens with these, I was having an argument with somebody on Twitter the other day because she was saying, oh, you just misunderstood your shamans. You should never question your shaman. Well, that is so wrong. You should question your shaman, your lawyer, the policeman, everybody, your teachers. Of course you should question them.
That's like telling a young boy, you definitely should trust your priest.
Absolutely. It's the wrong way to go. Everything warrants question. When you're about to give somebody your biggest trust and open up your soul to them, you need to know that they are a very good person in and outside their maloka.
Well, we
you
live
have
in
to
a
watch
world,
what their habits are.
we live in a world of polarity, and there's dark and light, and some people are way dark and some people are way light, and everything in between.
And exactly, and you give people some power and they misuse it, and this is what is happening with some of those shamans, because the ayahuasca tourism is so big down there.
Well,
that everybody's seen all the money come in. So there's people down there claiming to be shamans that aren't really shamans.
Well,
but they're seeing the gringo buck come in and they want to take advantage of it.
Especially because of how much they can do with there and living there. With the money goes a lot further, doesn't it?
It goes way further. We're all extremely wealthy people,
right,
by comparison and lifestyles. So they look at us all as the great big fat cats that are rich and can afford to lose lots of money. Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, they feel a little entitled, don't they?
They feel very entitled. They feel a lot entitled, not a little.
Plus you combine that with misuse of the spiritual, and the arrogance can get pretty powerful, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and the misuse of their powers as well, because they do acquire deeper power and knowledge of the plants and can manipulate you while you're drinking the ayahuasca.
Well, don't you think that's the humankind's real problem anyhow, is misuse of power? And
yes.
Absolutely. Then you take it and you put it into a place where you can take advantage of people with that power. It escalates and can be...
Yes. It's the biggest thing that's bringing down.
So if someone were wanting to have the experience of ayahuasca, how do they find their way to someone who's of the light, someone who's reputable, a shaman they can trust? You're not going to find them on Craigslist, are you?
No, you won't be finding them on Craigslist or in any yellow pages, that's for sure. I wish you could.
You're right.
I strongly recommend stay away from anywhere in Iquitos, Peru anyway, because they've got their convention down there. And what that does is just bring it to a point of being a Mecca tourism, and
right.
That becomes all it's about. You're not finding a high-quality shaman down there. I went to lots of them. There's lots of sorcery and lots of people taking advantage, and everybody making promises and hoping the gringa's going to open up a center for them, and stealing properties and like I said, souls. I haven't been to Ecuador. I have been to Colombia with the Cofan tribe, and highly recommend them. I hear there's some fabulous ones in Ecuador, but the best advice that somebody can give them is I believe there's some forums out there where you can find out the negatives
right.
about some of the shamans. I'm certainly open for discussion if anybody wants to get a hold of me.
And you're on
I think
Facebook,
it's very
right?
important work.
You're on Facebook, and
I'm on Facebook,
and you have a website.
Spirit of the Waters at shaw.ca.
Spirit of the Waters at Shaw. Hey, by the way, where can they buy your book?
They can buy my book right now. It's online on Amazon, of course, Trafford Bookstore, and Barnes & Noble.
Great. And
because I've been on the island, on this small island, and I have a bed, breakfast, and a yoga studio. So getting off the island to get it into bookstores right now is just not happening. So that's going to have to wait till autumn because it's a busy time of year here.
So that's how you make your living, is with your bed and breakfast and a yoga studio?
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you really designed your life pretty well.
So far, I'm always up for switching it up and change with every time there is change. I experience such great growth. So I'd like to maybe move the bed, breakfast, and yoga studio to another part of Canada.
Where there's more traffic, or
more traffic. I can continue my travels and not necessarily be on a small island, so I'm not accessible to the international airports as readily, and so more accessible for me to get out of here, and more accessible for people to come to me.
So you're feeling a bit isolated.
I'm starting to feel isolated. Like I said, I come back to Pender Island with my tail between my legs every time I'm wounded, and now I'm feeling healed, and it's time for me to spread my wings again.
That's kind of a nice space to get to, isn't it?
It is. So it's a good thing. It's a celebration.
Absolutely. You know, one of the statements you make in your book, you call ayahuasca sacred. Tell me why.
Oh, it's very sacred. It opened me up to God and Jesus Christ, and a part of me that I had not experienced before. She's a very sacred vine. She's very powerful, very mysterious, and she's called a master plant, a teacher plant in the world of botany, and feminine but strong. She's a female plant, and she brings out the goddess in the females with from what I can be able to tell with all the other women I've worked with. She really taps you into your own femininity. With men, their masculinity. Apparently, she approaches them all sexually and flirts with them a lot. I'm not sure. Could be their egos, but that's the story.
Right.
Right.
And you know, the thing about this whole idea, you said something that was really interesting to me, that ayahuasca brought you to Jesus Christ. You mean in a fundamentalist kind of Christian way, or as kind of
no, I'm not. I can't give it any book or anything. I don't know enough about religions. I am reading some of them to say to who, but then that name was mentioned as well as God while under the influence of ayahuasca. And the tribe that I work with in Colombia works with a very strong God energy.
Right.
I very much believe in God.
Absolutely.
I just don't necessarily believe in the Bible.
Yeah, I think, you know, like religion has a tendency to make God far smaller than God is.
Yes.
And really confines God with some rules that are completely. Well, you only have to look at the Taliban and the news here lately, and the two guys that, you know, they were arguing over one woman, and they decided that she'd embarrassed them both, so they went and took her in the woods and shot her 10 or 12 times.
Yes, and these are apparently highly religious people, so I don't. Yeah, I saw that sadly on Facebook and had a prayer for her yesterday.
Oh, it's nuts! It's completely.
It's not. To me, organized religion is not really going that well.
Well, that's part of why the spiritual but not religious show came into being, was because here in the States, right now, more than 20% of the population claims that they're spiritual but not religious and aren't attending church. They're not finding the experience that they want, they're craving for in churches. It's not happening.
No, and I understand why. I understand why people are pulling away and falling away from. And it's not that they're falling away from faith of God.
No.
Of our Creator, and not even necessarily of each other. It's that they're falling away from what's going on inside these institutions that are doing the same thing that the shamans are doing, and it's a domino effect of once you get the power, then all of a sudden you abuse the power.
Well, I think there's a very positive happening in the frame of that negative, and that is that what it's causing people to do is have to rethink their religion and not just go on what they were told. And I think that's, in my experience, that's essential. We each must go on our own personal journey.
a lot of thinking for ourselves going on, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, and if we're comfortable and all cozy, we're not going to be so inclined to do that.
No, I agree, and I've noticed too that people are checking out different religions. Not like before, it used to be whatever you were born into.
Absolutely.
And then you would not question it. Well, I was born Christian, so therefore I am, as opposed to maybe reading about some of the other religions that aren't so prominent and out there.
Right. So
and making your choice of who presents himself better, because it is nice to belong to a community.
You know, I think community is hugely important, and that's
I think it's nice to belong to a nice spiritual community, and then you can have the like-minded people around. So finding the right one is definitely as much research as, I guess, as if you're finding the right college or university to go into, or the right man to marry. Finding the right community, the right person to do ayahuasca, the right person to do your soul searching with, is extremely important to your journey.
Yeah, probably more important than like the right college or the right man or woman or
right.
But really.
But people spend so much time choosing that. I don't know. The right man's pretty important.
Well, I understand. Well, you
not
know,
ever wanting to leave a legacy in the courthouses again. I'm making sure it's the right one next time.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there comes a time where we really just have enough pain, and
I agree.
We don't choose any more pain.
No.
So you talk about past lives, right?
Yeah.
And tell us about. Did you recall past lives before your first ayahuasca journey, or was it after?
None, and I had 2 life regression sessions, reading sessions, and didn't like either of them. There were a few things.
Were you just too closed down, or was it the people?
No, I've always been very open to that. I've always been. I mean, I got a little bit more closed down towards my spirituality while with my husband, because we lived a sex, drug, and rock and roll lifestyle. So there's not a lot of room for spirituality in that. But I was on the path before that, so I've always been open-minded. So I think I was giving of myself and my energy. I just didn't really get what I was healing, and they were both extremely different.
Right.
But the what I went to in ayahuasca when I experienced some of my ancestry, it was going back to when my DNA had visited this planet on other times. I really felt like I was there. I was a beggar in India. I felt it. I heard it. I smelt it.
I too have had past life experiences. None of them famous, but I certainly, like you, smelling, the smells as a beggar in India. Pretty powerful, isn't it?
It's very powerful.
Did that put together some pieces for you that were missing in this lifetime?
Not yet. And strangely enough, as you read in the book, I had that shaman, the supposed world-renowned healer, who I lovingly call Rat Shaman. He had blocked my visions, which is something they can do as well, which means all the money I was paying to have the visions and to learn my lessons was blocked off. He also left a dieta open, which is extremely dangerous. I could have died.
Tell us for our viewers who don't know what a dieta is. Give us
a dieta is when you are doing the plant medicine, a specific plant usually, with ayahuasca and with the energy of the shaman. You're living a very clean life. There's no alcohol, supposedly no sex, although he was seducing me in the Maloka, so apparently sex is okay for him. Nothing but clean living, so you're taking in the vibration and the rhythm of the universe and learning from her and the plants you're ingesting. The plant that I was dieting on was ayahuasca, to get off all the pain pills and the antidepressants and anti-inflammatories I was taking. It was supposedly to help me detox and also teach me. So ayahuasca is another teacher plant. Well, that dieta was left open, I'm assuming, to keep me sick at first, so I would keep coming back from Canada.
Uh-huh. So in your book, that's kind of a good segue to your chapter, Seduction, is it not? We lost you again.
Yeah, I'm just phoning back.
Great. Well, the good part is we won't lose you for too long, and we don't lose you on the audio. Now you can see why we don't use Skype audio.
That's why. I get it now. I've lost your number here. It's not showing up.
Not coming through?
Oh, you guys just called me.
Well, you know what? We may not be able to get you back. Well, the good part is we have your voice, and we still have a picture of you. So we can't call you.
Okay, hang on. Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear
There
me?
we go.
Mm-hmm. She's on.
Okay.
We're back.
Good job. Good job. You know, there was a time early on when we were broadcasting, we'd run into a Skype problem like that, and, you know, everything kind of went crazy, and the show shut down, and we didn't, you know, it took a while, a couple of bruised knees and a couple of bumps on the head.
I bet.
You know, I'm going to tell you,
I bet.
live broadcasting over the internet with Skype, you have to really put your ego in your back pocket, I'll tell you that.
And that's not a bad idea anyway.
And that's not a bad
Very
idea
good place
anyway.
for ego.
It's a very
You know, I
good place for
realized,
ego.
quite a few years ago that the ego was out to kill me. It wasn't smart enough to realize if it did that it was the end of it. You know?
No, there you go.
So
No, there you go.
following a dunce like that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Outsmarting your ego.
Yeah.
Outsmarting your ego.
So let's kind of skip ahead to reclaiming sexuality, because, you know, like with all the hardships and the difficulties and the problems, talk to us about that chapter a bit. You know.
Well, I'd really had.
Well, I'd really had.
Ceremony one time.
It was in the ceremony one time that it was brought to me about what a gift sex is, and I really had spent a lot of my time as part of my language
and not making
fucking
love.
Right.
and not making love.
And
Could you be a little more
And
blunt?
it would be not to sugarcoat it for you.
Tom is off the seat. That's good.
And it's not that that's a bad thing, but all the
time it's
you
not a
want
good
to be
thing
able to
either.
make love, and I
You
wasn't
want to be
sure
able to make love, and
that
I
I
wasn't
knew
sure
how.
Yes.
that I knew
So
how.
being taught
So being
via
taught
ayahuasca to be softer
via
and more
ayahuasca
sensuous
to be softer and more
with
sensuous
myself was a really
with
beautiful
myself was a
ceremony that I
really
had one
beautiful
time, and,
ceremony that I had one time, and
myself as
reclaiming myself
being
as
very feminine and very
being very
deserving
feminine and very
of that.
deserving.
Were you reclaiming
that.
yourself, or were you claiming it for the first time?
I think I was.
I think
That's a
I
very good
was.
question.
That's a very good question.
Very good question. I'd have
Very
to think
good
way
question.
Back
Yeah,
to.
I'd have to think way back,
It's an
too.
interesting thought, isn't it? Some of the
Yeah,
things.
it's a very interesting thought.
Yeah, it's a very
Because,
interesting thought.
the rape happened.
Because
when I was
the
19,
rape happened
Right.
when I
It's
was
not like you know a
19,
whole
so
lot about all
it's
that
not like you
anyway,
know a
then
whole
even
lot
though
about
you
all that
think
anyway.
Oh,
Then even though you think you do,
you think you're
We
the
know-
best on the
you
planet
think
at
you're
that
the
point,
best
right?
on the
Yeah, we know a
planet
lot
at that
about
point,
everything.
right?
Yeah, we know it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know it all. So probably
claiming
it for me
Right.
for my first time
is what I was doing.
is what I was doing, just being okay with me, with my
femininity, with my
with my femininity, with my
Did you
sensuality.
find that a certain amount of kindness emanating from you came with that reclamation?
Oh yes, and much more gentleness.
Oh yes, and much more gentleness and much more
losing the edginess that one gets for
not only from being raped, being in the relationship I was in, where
that
I mean,
lifestyle.
that lifestyle.
We were in the bar business.
Oh, we were in the bar business as well as the hotel business. That gives you a bit of an edge after 25 years as well, right?
So I was
reclaiming all that from myself in doing these ceremonies and doing the repair
My path was
work.
on the other side of the bar from you, but I knew you well when I was out there doing what I was doing, you know?
Yes, I've served you before.
Yes, I've served you
Without
before.
question. You know, and those were grand times when they worked.
They were very grand times.
Boy,
They were
when they
very
stopped
grand
working,
times.
They really stopped working.
Yeah. There is a time when we must all grow up.
There is
and
a time when we
walk
must
away
all
from the
grow
bar.
up and walk
Yeah,
away from the
you-
bar.
That's really key, isn't it? We must mature. We must grow up.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
You know, as long as things were going well, that wasn't going to happen for me.
No.
No.
No. You
No.
had to do the hit rock bottom.
No, you had to do the hit rock bottom.
Mm.
Hey, I have one other question. Did
Mhm.
you? Another question's kind of off topic here, but it isn't. You know, you've done ayahuasca. There's another thing called DMT. Have you tried that at all?
DMT is a component
DMT
is
a component of the ayahuasca brew. Ayahuasca itself will not take you on the journeys. You have to mix it with DMT in order for it to be effective, because the enzymes in your tummy will stop ayahuasca from giving you visions unless it's mixed in with DMT. So ayahuasca itself is legal in North America. It's the chacruna and the toy or whatever other method, and those are plants that contain the DMT that are illegal.
So in doing ayahuasca,
you are doing DMT,
which is
the
really interesting
methyltryptamine.
because we produce that within our bodies.
We do.
And yet we make it illegal.
We do.
How's that for a conundrum?
Yes. Yeah. Well, none of
what they make illegal makes any sense.
No, this whole war on drugs
is the biggest waste of money.
Well, you know, I think it's become an industry that supplies too many people with their livelihood for it to change much. You know.
Well, it's like anything else. If they want
if they want it. I mean, it's 2012 and prostitution is still illegal.
And yet something that could be monitored.
Health-wise. So not so many babies would go missing.
And they could pay
and they could pay their taxes.
It's kind of a win-win if we legalize.
It's kind of a win-win if we legalize, and the same thing would happen with drugs.
The problem is, it goes back to exactly what your husband was doing with you, and that's the power control.
Right.
People, you know, like my ideas, my beliefs are the only right way. There isn't another right way. And,
right.
And we have the power to enforce that. And so, so we're really caught in that kind of thing. So tell us about the knight in shining armor.
Oh gosh, that was just.
Well,
I mean, I was so sick then. This is when.
This is when I was living with that open dieta. So I wasn't even paying attention. And what he was doing was, by then I had bought the property down there, and I was building Peru, Spirit of the Waters. I had my B&B yoga studio here is called that. A Spirit of the Waters in Peru is going to be the next one, and I was building. I had 16 acres of a beautiful piece of property that I was developing. I put a lagoon in, and a 7-bedroom lodge, and a two suite residence, a maloka, chicken coops. I was really creating Eden, and I needed help with that. And so these were the different people that were coming in. The one being the shaman, Rat Shaman, and then the other was the guy who was being the translator, who of course I had to trust. The group that had brought me down there brought him into the Maloka in the first place. So it was just, he was the one that was translating bad things about Rat Shaman.
So he ended up having me fire
at him, and who knows what was true, because he was the translator. And then he ended up ripping me off, of course, but he was telling me I needed him to protect me from Rat Shaman and from all the badness that was going down. Now, I mean, it later came to me that there was lots of badness going on, but Juan Carlos was certainly just as guilty as the rest of them.
The darkness of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle has a tendency to kind of draw us into that darker side of spirituality when we come to it.
As we're re-getting to know ourselves.
We have our penance to pay. Is that what you mean?
We really have to. From my experience, I've had to really claim the dark side of me. You know, understanding it, putting my arm around it, not fighting it, but not living in it either.
Yes, I've had to.
It's funny you should mention that, because I have been doing that with the last few ceremonies I did in Colombia with the Kofan tribe, and definitely purging my darkness
and getting rid of that.
Now I'm purging. Now I'm doing the throwing up and facing the darkness.
If you think about it, Tracy, because we live in a world of polarity, we must have the darkness, because it's the darkness supports the light as much as the light supports the darkness. Just like a door's got to have a front and a back, you got to have a top and bottom. Everything has got its polar opposite.
Well, it's like that cliche. You can't
know the light until you live the dark.
Recognize it as good.
You wouldn't recognize it as good or otherwise.
What I've found, trying to wrestle with my dark side is like trying to wrestle with an alligator in quicksand. You can't win.
No.
You just have to leave
no,
it.
you can't. Great analogy.
No,
Yeah,
you can't. Great analogy.
Because it'll suck you down every time.
Great analogy. That's fabulous.
Great analogy. That's fabulous. And it will suck you down every time.
It's like you said, embrace it. And
it's like you said,
learn
embrace it and learn from it.
Flick it away from your mind.
Flick it away from your mind when it creeps in when you don't want it and don't need it.
Well, I haven't quite figured out its purpose.
I haven't quite figured out its purpose yet, other than so that we can then recognize light. I know that. I think that without suffering, we don't tend to look up and pray and ask and speak to God and Creator. If everything's going fine, it's like you said in the bar, it all works when everything's going fine, but when everything goes to hell in the handbasket, all of a sudden you're looking up and you're starting to do your daily prayers again.
A lot of people find God when their butt's on fire.
Exactly. So
I'm trying to make it in my life in a nice even keel where I have a steady relationship with Him.
An open line of communication.
An open line of communication, if you will.
Without that open line, that intuition, I really have like a compass right in the middle of my solar plexus that I use in conjunction with my brain and my heart.
Good for you. And are you piloting?
Good for you. And are you piloting it right?
Pretty often.
I lost mine.
I lost mine. And I'm going back to when the Dieta was open and when they had taken away, when they were using their negative energies against me, I had lost all of that. I have only in the last year started to get my intuition back and trusting it again.
There are so many people in the world who, when you talk about your Dieta was open, I think that happens like just a course of nature for a lot of people, and they're out there kind of wandering around. The work that you're doing, your book, I think, speaks to a lot of people who can't really unravel the space they're in.
I hope so. I hope it helps people.
I hope so. I hope it helps people. I hope it's a good warning and a good lesson, and as well as a good story. And I know a lot of people say to me, "Boy, you were so brave." They were saying that when I was building my retreat center down in Iquitos as well. And I don't know if I'm really brave or really stupid. I just know that I really wanted to share with the people going out there this story. I mean, we all have our story. Every single one of us, and I wish everybody would write it. I truly believe that true stories are the best stories told by brave souls, and to acknowledge that and to learn from that is not a bad idea.
Myself, the one thing I know comes very difficult for most of us, and that's to be able to write the truth.
Yes.
The real truth. It's easy to write the truth about somebody else or what we see as the truth. But I'm talking about that truth about us.
Right.
Yeah, to be raw and open.
Yeah, to be raw and open. And one of the hardest things, because I was very sick when I was writing the book still. Like I said, I just got feeling better
a year ago
this month, July of last year, when I found the co-contract. So I was very sick for 6 years.
Very sick before that with the car accident.
Very sick before that with the car accident, and then very sick because of ending up in the wrong hands of the wrong shaman, working with the plants and then manipulating my energies.
You can really create a wide swath of difficulties for yourself in the process of that, can't you?
You can, and it can be extremely
extremely expensive. I was very lucky that at the time I had some disposable income to invest into getting myself better and then re-getting myself better from the damage done. It can be very costly if you have to keep going back to straighten out the energies of an ill-intended shaman.
I got very lucky.
I got very lucky in some people
I didn't have to advertise
that I didn't have to advertise it. I didn't have to bring in some Peruvian people at all, because the ones I was dealing with sadly left a very bad taste in my mouth for all Peruvian people in that way. But I have some people from England bought it.
Tracy, there's a lot more I would like to talk with you about, but we've run out of time.
Well, I just so enjoyed talking.
I just so enjoyed talking with you. That was very painless and very fun.
Hesitation on your part to begin with. I'm glad that you took me up on it. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Tell us again, where can we find your book?
My book is available at
Trafford Bookstore online, as well as Amazon, of course.
As well as
as well as Barnes and Noble. And I'll be getting it into bookstores in the next while.
My website is
spiritofthewaters.com. You can order it right there from my website too. There's a page in my website that takes you to my B&B and my yoga studio.
I really recommend
as well.
Viewers take a hike over there and get acquainted with what you have, Tracy.
Well, I really appreciate that.
Well, I really appreciate that.
And I'll look forward to you get down here in sunny Florida. Look me up. We'll have a cup of coffee.
Oh, that sounds like a fabulous idea.
Sounds like a fabulous idea. I love Florida.
Okay, thank you to you and your staff.
Okay, thank you to you and your staff.
Bye.
Well, I told you it was going to be an interesting conversation. The thing that I find so fascinating is the depth of spirituality that comes out of the depth of darkness. Sometimes we have to go to some of the really darkest places to find our way. So I've got another interesting guest coming up next week right here. Hey, and do spend some time, if you're watching this after the fact, after the show, somewhere from the archives, come back to the site. Check us out. There's just lots of things. We are really, really working hard at making the Spiritual Broadcasting Network, SBN, video.tv, the go-to place for all things spiritual. So have a great week, and in the meantime, don't forget to accentuate the positive, and we'll see you next time.